Hey, welcome to Dating Games V2. I'm Jackie, and this is my co-host Michelle. Whether you're newly single, divorced, or waking up to the possibility of love again, you're in the right place because here at Dating Games, we believe it's not about him, it's about you. And today we're going to rewind, take you back to a pivotal moment. It started with a simple text message exchange, a glass of wine, a magical date, and then that quiet voice in your head asking yourself, how did I feel? How did this date really go? Today we're the Post Date 8, a reflection practice inspired by dating coach Logan Yuri's work. And before discovering her approach, we had already asked ourselves these questions, but her list really sharpened the process for us.
So I think we'll just, Jackie and I have talked about this quite a lot, and we have a
Mm.
lot of kind of our own personalizations that we'll share with everybody. But first, we wanted to just talk through the original questions that Logan Yuri had posed, and it gives you a sense of the breadth and where it can go. So first of all, you could ask yourself when you come back from that date or the next morning, what side of me did this date bring out? Was it an
Mm,
intellectual side? Was it a playful side? How
mm.
did my body feel during the date? Was I kind of tense? Was I relaxed? Did I feel kind of, kind of sexy? What was it?
Yes.
Did I feel energized, more energized after the date? And sometimes, you can leave a date and think, ugh, that was hard work.
Mm. Oh, we've
And
been.
and and you don't know why, but that's how you feel. You
Mm.
could also say, is there something about this person that I'm still curious about? Did they mention a few things that you wanted to follow up on, but maybe you didn't have time,
Yeah.
or there's just something
Mm,
kind of interesting and you feel
mhm,
curious to know more.
mm, mm,
One of my personal favorites, did they make me laugh?
mm.
Did I feel heard? Did I feel attractive in their presence? What
Yeah.
side of me did they bring out on the more sort of playful or serious or something else? Did I feel captivated? Did I feel bored? Kind of an expansion on how I felt really the next morning, or maybe even when you get home immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so interesting because what we've both done is we've created our own little lists that we've adapted to our own lives because everybody's dating stage will be different. And so I can reflect upon some of the questions and we'll discuss some of the questions that I came up with, some of it which resonated from Logan
Mm,
Yuri's list,
mm,
but
mm.
that I've expanded upon for myself. So my questions include things like, how did I show up? And did I let myself have fun during this date? So, for example, I've always said that dating should be fun, it should be adventurous. It's a time to explore yourself, explore what you like. And I remember on a couple of occasions whereby I would say to my date, one in particular, that please let us not ask the normal questions of how many kids do you where do you work? And what do you do? Let's abandon those questions. Let's have some fun. Tell me something interesting about yourself or create something. It doesn't even matter because what you want to do is showcase yourself and play around with who you are and see how your date responds. See how flexible they are and see how flexible you can be as well. How much fun you can have, right?
Well, and what that brings to mind for me is that sometimes when you get that question again, and it might not even be in a dating context, right? And this has happened to me
Mm,
many times in my life because, I've been living in Asia a long time, and a lot of people ask me, so what brought you to Asia, right? In a dating
absolutely.
situation, it's like, so how many kids did you have? Oh, so
Mm,
where did you work? And you can find yourself just like falling into this sort of like, even though maybe you're trying to make it sound interesting, you can find yourself just sort of repeating and not
absolutely.
not kind of being excited about what you're saying even because you've said it so many times.
Exactly. And after a while, instead of having fun, it just feels like a job interview because you are repeating the
Mm.
same answers to the same questions constantly. What brought you out here? What did you do? Come on, spice it up a little bit. Then my next question was my date genuinely curious about me, or did they
Uh,
just talk about themselves? And this is really important because somebody who's interested in you will display genuine curiosity. But also, I think it also speaks to the, are they able to use the vocabulary needed to be genuinely interested and curious about you? This is a
is
big
there
thing for
anything that you would want them to ask you about? Do you care what they ask just as long as they ask? Or is there topics that you're thinking about?
yeah, so there's not necessarily any particular topics that's of interest. It's, are they able to, if I mention, for example, if I mention something like, I'm currently reading a book and it's about the genocide in Rwanda. If I were to mention anything about it, do they then take that information and run with it? Are they willing to ask me a question like, "Hey, have you been to Rwanda? What did you think of the book? What made you decide to read about the genocide?" It's not exactly a light topic. that's the type of curiosity I'm trying to understand. And then, about myself in particular. So I have two teenage boys. Oh, so how do you find dating with kids? What's been their attitude toward it? Or oh, what are they up to at the moment? That type of thing. And I guess it's the ability to see if they are able to continue the conversation, or is it just merely them? Are we able to play a good game of tennis conversation, or is it merely them just presenting themselves constantly and just showcasing themselves and everything about themselves? That's what I'm really trying to
Well, and
understand.
I think it shows, well, first of all, it shows interest. Are they
Yes,
interested
of
in
course.
you? And I mean, I
Yes.
don't know if this has happened to you, but there have been a number of times
Mm,
where I've been in chat conversations, I've sort of dropped a couple little
mm.
hints. Oh, I just came back from France, or
Correct.
I just did
Yes.
something. And then they don't ever ask about that again. Or,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, I retired 7 years ago. And there's no
Mm,
follow-on question. And you're kind of thinking,
yeah.
was it not interesting to them? Did they not hear
Mm,
me? Did they not? So it's kind of, I mean, I think it's a
mm.
really good question. Did they actually
Yeah.
care?
And I mean, I've experienced this as well. So you are messaging somebody, you're exchanging text messages, and like you said, you drop something interesting. Oh, last night I attended a pottery class. Nothing. Oh, I've just returned from tennis. Oh, how was the game? That type of thing. And if it's always you doing the follow up and you being
Yeah.
curious about them versus the other way around, well, then that leaves a bit of a question in your mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question is, did I feel a spark of chemistry or connection, physical
Mm,
attraction?
yeah.
For really, really important. And for myself personally, what I find is, and gents, if you didn't know this, and please, please listen carefully, women generally find men more attractive when
Mm,
they show interest in them.
mm,
So my date is really curious about me. Suddenly he becomes a lot more attractive because you are building a connection, a lot of, oh, me too, I'm interested in that. Oh, me too, that sounds like fun. And even
mm.
if you didn't do the same thing, there is this type of connection. And suddenly that can spark a chemistry. I don't know about you. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I love a good conversation. And I
Oh, yeah.
definitely, even like if I'm not even in the room with the person, but we're having an amazing chat conversation, I
Yes.
find that I'm already like kind of like, "Ooh, I would really like to see this person," because I feel so like
Yes.
attracted, right? Um,
Absolutely.
but I was going to ask a different question too, like
Mm,
because I think sometimes at this age, I mean, I've come back from dates and I've had friends go, "Oh, was there a spark?" And
yes.
and I've had many a date and some that led to many more dates that on the
Mm,
first date, it was kind of more sort of getting to know you, and I didn't necessarily feel a spark.
feel. Mm.
And so I think for a lot of people, the question is if I didn't feel a spark, what does that mean?
Mhm. So what does it mean? Because I remember a certain situation whereby you didn't have a spark on the first date, but I believe you did on the second or third
Yeah, and I think that, again, at this age, after all of our
stage.
life experience, we are. It's well, excuse me. Sometimes the connection is more, I mean, some of that is pure just chemical, right? And you may
Yes.
not have a long-term attraction to this person, but you do feel, or they have a very sort of sensual, sexual persona. And so I
Mm,
think kind of in the scope of your questions, I think it's an excellent question. And yet staying open to whether it was too much or maybe there would be next time, or maybe I should check on it and not sort of close the
yeah.
door if you didn't feel it right away.
Yeah. Instantly. Yeah. My next question, and this I know is very key to both of us, is for me, it's a big thing. What can I learn from this person?
Mm,
Personal growth is really important. So I'm not necessarily referring to do are you well versed in the arts as an example?
right.
For me, it's not that only. It's are you willing to grow? Are there good habits that you have that I could steal from you? And you can pick up a lot. For me, I've picked up a lot in certain dates that I've gone to where I've thought, my gosh, how interesting. That's definitely something I could learn
Mm,
from. Or wow, I've never been exposed to that world. I remember one of my dates in particular, a really charming man. He was a sponsor of outdoor art murals, murals, and he would arrange for artists to travel to Cape Town and to work in certain areas and paint certain areas to uplift the area specifically, not necessarily gentrifying, but definitely giving
mm,
it in fresh coat. And it was really interesting. I remember we went on a tour to a place I'd never been before, saw the artwork of various artists, so incredibly interesting. And I thought, wow, this adds another dynamic to who you are,
mm,
another
mm.
this onion, but another layer to who you are. And that makes you interesting. And for me, it's really important to be able to learn from the person that I'm with, that I'm dating. Yeah, very interesting for me.
Mm.
And
Yeah, I think
then,
like the fact that
hmm,
they can share that with you, that's also, and hopefully you can see a side of them. I mean, if maybe they're an expert in opera or an expert in, I don't know, antique cars or something, and
mm,
it's not that you necessarily want to know everything about opera or everything about antique
no,
cars, but the fact that they have this kind of unusual thing that they know about and that they it kind of opens a little window into who they are and
yeah,
maybe some
yeah,
subtler, I don't know, some subtler background or interests that they
yeah.
have you might not have seen otherwise.
Absolutely, and it gives you a glimpse into a different world, which I find really exciting. I love seeing things that I've not been exposed to before. I love the ability to have little glimpses into different worlds. So that's for me, that's quite interesting.
Mm.
And did our dating goals align? Were we both here to have fun? Is there potential for a relationship of some sorts? For some, it's hey, I just want to one night stand, and that's absolutely cool. If that's what you're looking for, go for it. For others, it's yeah, I quite like dating you, but I'm maybe interested in a little romantic love affair that's not on a day-to-day basis. And then there's others that says or feel like I have a real long-term relationship. I'd like to see I'd like us to become very close. And so I think it's really important to understand, do your dating goals align?
Sorry,
Uh,
I'm just giggling because I'm thinking about a particular date of yours where
yes,
I think
you mentioned that.
was it the first lunch that you had? And he
Lunch
was
number two.
okay, lunch number two. He was very excited about the fact that you had children and you
Yeah.
could basically, I don't know, slot into his life as a little package.
Absolutely. In fact, it was so funny because I remember him saying to me, we were sitting having lunch, and he said to me, Jackie, you do know that you're a package deal. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I am? It's
That
like
good?
booking.com, flights and hotel. He then proceeded to say, I am able to take care of you and your children. And I thought to myself, wow, this is date number
Thank
two.
you.
The goals are slightly misaligned. Flattered, but no, thank you.
Little quick. But his
Just
goals, in that case, your dating goals were not necessarily aligned in the short term. You know, he was obviously very kind of keen on having kind of a settle down, find that person. And
yes,
if you already had kids, you didn't have to go through the troublesome part. But it would be a family, kind of a ready-made family. And
I
maybe for
know.
him, that was exactly what he wanted, but not for you, perhaps.
Absolutely. For me, absolutely not. And then another important question on my list is how did our energy compare? So,
Mm,
what energy like versus what was mine? And what I mean over here is I'm not talking about how high energy you are. That's not what I'm referring to at all. But the energy levels that you vibrate, which can be felt almost immediately when you
mm,
step into a room. And so, for me, it's really important that people bring a pure, clean,
mm,
healthy energy wherever they go. I'm not interested in negativity. I'm not interested in putting other people down. I'm not interested in people who, and both of us are the same in this case, who don't have growth mindsets. This is
mm,
really important that the that our energy is aligned because I always feel that there are enough problems in the world, and for me to be with somebody that continues to manufacture, create, it's really not for me. And I need to be with somebody who has a very clear idea of who they are and what it is that they're looking for, and that you can feel in somebody's energy almost immediately, just as
mm.
they of course, you get to explore it a lot more as the date unfolds. But yeah, this is really important to me. So I'm going to run through my questions quickly, and then Michelle will be adding hers as well. So, how did I show up? Was my date genuinely curious about me? Uh, Spark of chemistry or connection? What could I and can I learn from this person? Did our dating goals align? And finally, what was their energy like versus mine? Michelle, elaborate on yours, please.
So, I mean, and this is, I think, what you know, what we're trying to share here, what Jackie and I are trying to share here, is that for each person, and even each stage of the dating journey, and perhaps even each date, you know, maybe on
Mm,
date one versus date 10, you're going to have different questions. But the idea
absolutely,
is to be
yes.
quite intentional,
Mm,
thinking about it, and again, focusing on what's important to you. And so your lists
yes.
are not going to be the same as Logan Yuri's or as Jackie's or as mine. It may be
Yes.
some combination, or you may have a something else completely different that we haven't thought of, which is more
Yeah.
than likely. So for me, as you can tell, I like to laugh. I like to smile.
Mm,
I enjoy being with people who are also, can make me laugh. They don't take themselves too seriously. I don't need a comedian, and I don't want to
mm,
feel like the comedy has overtaken the conversation. But I
yeah.
do find that when someone can make you laugh, it means, they're really thinking more broadly about who you are. They're engaged in this moment, and they're
Mm,
taking it, in a lighter way. It's not so heavy. It's
yes.
not that interview, because you never laugh in an interview, and they don't make you laugh in an interview.
No,
Uh,
and you don't want to turn your dates into interviews either.
no,
And I guess it often starts when you are faced with the same repeated questions and the same repeated answers, and you feel like you're just kind of running through
no,
the
you don't
so
want that.
it's very
And that
important.
doesn't, and sometimes, sometimes it's awkward when you begin, right? And I had a date recently that went off into kind of an unusual direction very quickly, and I can't even remember what set it off, but we got into vaccinations very quickly. And
Mm,
and then it was like, oh, we need to kind of pull back from that, because I'm afraid that we're going to go into something a little too deep for so early. But at least it
yeah.
was a different kind of conversation, right? And it brings out
Mm,
different ideas. So did
yes.
I much? The second
Mm,
one, which is really big, and Jackie knows this one for me,
yes.
effort. And
Yes.
effort is key, because I
Yes.
think it's very easy, and especially as I've mentioned before, I live on a vacation island, and people come and they go.
Mm,
A lot of retired people here. There are people who, have traveled all around the world. And in some cases, they're a little bit lazy, to be honest. They don't want,
mm,
they're staying in a zone far away, or they don't, they just rely on me to make all the dinner reservation and make all the decisions. And,
mm,
you know, you can start to see effort even in the chat,
yeah.
prior to, or if you get on a call and how much energy they put into it, you can start to see if there's
Mm,
effort. And I
mm,
don't want to be in a position where I feel like I'm, outpacing the effort. I'm making all the effort.
yeah. So share with us, what type of effort are you looking for? Or what type of it's important to you? I think that's probably better. What effort, what
Yeah,
type of
well, it's important. I mean, so even in an initial date, I've
mm,
had, like, recently I had a date. The guy was staying, it's not that far, in terms of distance, but it can be a little bit troublesome to get between where he was staying and where I am. And he
mhm,
didn't ask me to go to him. He said, no, I'll just jump in a cab and I'll come up there.
mm.
And I appreciated that. Meanwhile,
Yeah,
he said, but you know the area, so why don't you recommend the restaurants? And so what I did
yeah,
is I
fair
gave him
enough.
four choices and let him
Mhm,
choose. And because again, I want this to be a give and take. I want him to feel comfortable. I don't want him to, he's thinking a beach bar, but I've chosen a high-end restaurant. You
yes.
want to make sure you're aligned there. So that kind
Mhm,
of effort is key. It can go also to, certainly the conversation. It may go to who's picking up the tab at the end. It may go to, a follow-up message that says, I really enjoyed that time. Would you like to meet again? It's all these little things.
yes. Absolutely.
So I'll move on from effort, but you can see it's a big
Yeah,
one for me. The next one
yeah.
is also kind of generous and kind. And that to me is
Mm,
just going to kind of, to your point about energy and sort of their vibe.
mm,
Do they come across nicely to the wait staff in the restaurant?
mm, mm,
Are they open and humble about who they are and the privileges they've probably
mm,
had in their life? And,
mm,
that to me means a lot, because I don't,
mm.
I like confidence, but I don't like arrogance. And I want
Yeah.
to,
So are you referring to generosity of spirit here, Michelle?
primarily, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
if they wanted
Okay.
to hand me $1 million, then that's fine as well.
Cool.
But primarily their generosity of spirit, how they interact
Yeah.
with other people, whether their time, their attention, their focus, those, you can be
Mm,
generous in all of those ways, right?
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so the next one, you talked a lot about what can I learn from this person, and kind of a
Mm,
little bit of a tangent from that is, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, is what did I learn about myself from this experience? So if I
yes.
go on a date and then I come back and I'm like, writing, sometimes I do write my post date eight, and
Mm,
what did I learn? What was the reason this experience was delivered to me? If it
mm,
was a positive experience, did I learn something about myself? Did I learn something about him or about the situation? If it was a negative
mm.
experience, how can what can I take away? What can I do differently next time? And
Yeah.
so that's important.
Yeah, and I think before you move on, I want to highlight that during this learning experience about yourself, it, and about the other person as well, but specifically about yourself over here, is that it's wise to observe, observe
Mm,
yourself, observe your behavior, your feelings, and not overly absorb.
Yes.
I think often during dates, especially first dates, if things doesn't go well, we over dramatize it. And if things go well, then we're planning weddings already. So it's really important to actually just take the actual learnings without the over dramatizing or
Or
amplifying.
berating yourself or yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. For example, the first time, and it will happen, the first time a guy comes onto you, and you feel uncomfortable, and sometimes you may ask yourself, "Oh my God, was it me? Did I do something? Did I?" It's so easy to fall into that negative trap.
Yeah.
But I think what Michelle's really trying to say over here is that look for the positive, look for the value, seek the value of what you can learn about yourself in that experience. And she's relayed an experience like that in one of our other podcasts where it happened to her during a first date, but the value that she sought was, this makes me feel uncomfortable. This is a boundary I don't want to cross. It's time
Yeah.
to extract myself. Yeah.
Well, and I think sometimes in that, when you review it kind of on reflection, so whether it's that evening or the
Yeah.
next day, you might even realize that you had some little inkling, some little intuition, positive or
Mm.
negative. I mean, I'm not making a judgment here, about
No.
it beforehand. Maybe you thought, oh, I bet he's a really nice guy. And then you meet him and you're like, he was a really nice guy. And, or maybe you're like, I don't know, that's a little bit odd that he said that like that, or he didn't share this information, or he was really kind of weird about sending a photo or whatever. And then you get to the date and you go, my intuition was right. And that helps you build
Yes.
the confidence around that.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. And one last thing, it helps build, let's highlight this, your dating confidence, because you don't become confident in the dating journey by not going out, by not exposing
sitting
yourself.
at home.
Yeah, exactly. By sitting at home, people often say, "Oh, when I'm ready, when I'm confident, then I'll go out and do it." It's the opposite. You have to go out and do it first, then you build your confidence levels. Okay.
So I think we'll encourage everyone to build their own
Mm,
list, even if it's
yeah,
just in your mind somewhere. But if you write it down, I mean, I found this to be useful, but I'm kind of a writer downer sort of person. Um,
yeah,
so if you go to build your own list, here are a couple guidelines or suggestions that we would make.
yeah,
First of all, self-awareness is the key here. The point is not to be sitting there saying, you know, he was a jerk, um, or he was amazing, I'm going to marry him tomorrow. The point is to not be grading that person, but to be looking at how you are interacting.
yeah,
Understand your feelings. What made you feel specifically that he was a jerk or that you want to marry him tomorrow? What is the
mm,
energy that he's putting off? What was it about the environment or where you were that made you feel in whatever way you felt? Because I
yeah,
think we
absolutely.
often tend to over focus on like little details like, oh, the waiter was crap, or he ordered the wrong wine, or my food was, cold, or,
Mm,
he didn't show up. I hated his shirt. It was a bad color, whatever the thing is. And we miss a lot of the bigger picture and the things that
yeah,
really mattered. Maybe your
absolutely.
dish was delivered cold, but he was your knight in shining armor, and he asked the waiter nicely, generously, to
Yes.
take it back
Mm,
and reheat it. He didn't throw a big, fit in the restaurant. I mean, there are all kinds of ways that you can deal with difficult
yeah.
situations, but check how you feel. That's the point of
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. And then evolve your list. Just before the
Mm.
podcast, we were speaking about it. So, of course, when you start your dating journey, and let's use one person as an example, you'll do date one, date two, date three, and perhaps during those first 3 dates, as an example, you could be asking yourself those same questions. But 5 months down the line, those questions may not be
That's
as
not
relevant.
relevant.
Not relevant at all. They are different types of questions. So it's really important to keep checking in with yourself and keep evolving that list. And one other thing, it's really when you do evolve that list, one mistake that we see women make often is, and especially when you've been out of the dating game for such a long period of
Mm.
time, is that we date reactively, almost from a place of desperation. And rather than thinking, hey, I am the prize. I'm really proud of myself. I'm a woman that I admire, look up to. And frankly, I would like to even, you can look at yourself and say, you're a person worthy of being dated. We wait like little wallflowers, waiting to be chosen. And so in that nature, it's really important to keep evolving your list. You're not there to be chosen, you're there to do the choosing. And what you will notice is the different patterns that come about. You will notice how you feel about yourself, and it's an opportunity to grow yourself from within as well. And I think that's really key when you
Mm.
evolve your list.
Oh, absolutely, over time.
Mm,
And kind of to that point, this list should reflect your values and your dating goals. I mean,
yes,
those are maybe that's
absolutely.
obvious, but
Yep.
Jackie's path is not my path. My path is
No.
not your path.
Yeah.
And each of us need to figure out where we are, what we want, and the questions, and you may have, some traumatic event in your life that you
Mm,
never want to repeat with a future partner. And you need to be, aware of things that relate to that you want to avoid. So if your partner was an untruthful sort of person and you note
yes.
that you're dating, the date you're on is, you're questioning the truthfulness of his of the stories or the interactions you're having, that's
Mm,
something to look out for. Because
yeah.
it's easy to get stuck in those patterns, right? Where you end up kind
Absolutely.
of subconsciously choosing the same people over and over,
Mm,
and then wondering why. I mean, and we don't want to get into kind of the psychology of all of this, but you
mm,
you do want to break out, stay open to opportunities, and stay
mm.
open to people who are maybe outside your norm, but also
Yes.
don't sacrifice, don't certainly don't ever put yourself at risk, but also don't sacrifice values like honesty, generosity, those sorts of things are key, and you should never compromise.
Absolutely. Yeah, and they keep you grounded in who you are as a person. I think for our listeners, some of the big takeaways for this episode is when you create your list, be honest with yourself. This is
Mm,
really important. If your dating goal is sexual pleasure, be honest with yourself. Go for it. Have fun. If your dating goal is to find the one, the love of your life, fantastic. Be honest with yourself, because as soon as you create conflict between the two, you won't find what you're looking for. And then reflect with curiosity and not criticism. And it is so easy to do this, to look back on yourself and say, "Oh, I should have done this, and I wish I had done that, and I was silly to have done this." And you speak negatively to yourself. Flip that around and say, "Well, what did I learn?" Michelle often speaks about this, which I absolutely love. What did I learn? What value could I have sought? I think that's really important. And then this is Michelle's one. Don't get stuck on superficial checkboxes. Whether it's a Velcro wallet, whether it's a has to do this, has to do that, um, during your
maybe
day.
it's even maybe it's his height.
Maybe it's
That might be
absolutely maybe
superficial.
right. Yeah. And I'll give you an example from me. I had never dated a bald man before. One of my best dates was with a bald man. He was so incredibly charming. And no offense to bald men, but I just prefer men with hair. As you get older, you realize there are some
Fewer.
pictures. So that was, had I looked at him and thought, oh no, okay, I would have really passed on such an amazing experience. And
Mhm.
then how you felt, what you learned, and where your intuition points lie. I think it's really important. The more both of us have dated, the more we listen to ourselves more, the more we trust our instincts, and you become more in tune with that as well.
Mm.
Your the patterns you learn, the way you feel, and whether that's something you want to incorporate into your life or not. So I think that's our roundup of takeaways for today. And if this episode has resonated with you, then share it with a friend, share it with a family member, and help us grow our community of dating dames.
And if you're looking for guidance or just a laugh along the way, come join us on Dating Dames V2 on Instagram, Facebook, all the socials.
And until next time, embrace the adventure of dating and trust your instincts. And do remember, it's not about him, it's about you.